What About Vietnam? A podcast with Carrie Newsom. The series where Carrie talks with travellers about their experiences and adventures. Find out more about Vietnam from the people who have actually been there.
What about Vietnam?
Whether it's adventure, exploring the culture and cuisine, shopping, or just soaking up the sun. Let Carrie and her travellers pave the way for a magical holiday in Vietnam.
What about Vietnam?
Xin chào and welcome to What About Vietnam. I'm calling today's episode an insider's view into the best nightlife in Saigon. And the reason I'm doing this is because I'm actually talking to an insider, a lovely girl who at the moment is living in Saigon, Vietnam, and managed to find herself there just prior to COVID hitting. So we're kind of getting the best and the most up-to-date information about this city, and the focus of the program is definitely going to be on just all the great things to do after dark. I mean, let's face it, a lot's changed, and I wanted to make this show all about Saigon and certainly about after dark. And the best way I thought to do this was to let Selene showcase her knowledge. So you're not going to hear too much of me and me interjecting in any way. I just really wanted to, put a proper focus on all of the aspects of going out at night that she was able to share in a way that you could relate to it and I guess consume it in some ways. The pandemic did have an effect on Vietnam, but certainly not as drastic as in most Western countries. You'll hear from Selene how the Vietnamese and the local expat fraternity decided to make the most of it. You're going to hear about how locals love to get out and about at night in the cool air. You know, what are and where are the places to go that make this city get talked about so much as a fabulous night spot? Is it safe? She puts some really good insights for you as a traveller to think about that. I'm happy to report the answer is yes. So what kind of experiences can a new traveller expect to see in Saigon when they do eventually get to come back to Vietnam? I think Selene's insights into that will be interesting for you as well. She talks about cocktails and venues and experiences that will suit all types of travellers. So whether you're a family, whether you're a solo traveller, in particular a female, or whether you're a backpacker, there's just something for everyone. So as we sit here still in trip planning mode, you're going to be considering the cities that you first enter the country. They're most likely going to be Hanoi, Saigon, or possibly Da Nang. You may want to consider definitely including a couple of nights, especially after this episode, having a couple of nights in Saigon as part of your trip, because there is a lot to do in this city. But from my personal experience, my best experiences of Saigon have been when I've had the value of people's experience and I've done some research, because it is a big city. It's got lots of districts and they each offer something unique. So to get about, and when you sort of come in to the country and you're like your head's doing a 360, I'm hoping this episode, along with some of the others in my series, maybe you might want to check out the shopping one and maybe the food ones that are coming on. I think if you have those in your backpack of things to do, it's going to make you enjoy the city so much more. Just a little bit about Selene. She's an Australian girl. She's been travelling back and forth to Vietnam since 2005. She decided, as I said, to make Saigon her home just prior to COVID, but she's never looked back. You'll hear how she absolutely loves Vietnam, Saigon, and certainly the Vietnamese people. She comes from a very dynamic and diverse career across film and media to product manufacturing and brand development. She's made documentary films, worked as a digital producer, and currently manages a small printing and sewing factory in Vietnam. She's the owner of two brands, Cushion Art and Caban, beautiful homeware products you might like to check out on the links in the show. She's had a career in film and media that spans almost 20 years. She's an excellent speaker, which is another reason why I decided to make this episode really all about her and what she can share for you as the listener. She's an award-winning producer of short stories and documentaries such as The Demon Fault, featured on SBS TV, Going, Going, Gone, and Every Story Has a Happy Ending, which has received over 300,000 views on YouTube. More recently, Selene returned to her passion, writing stories for screen, and is developing a TV series. She's proficient in English, French, Vietnamese, would you believe, and some Spanish. I know you won't be able to write notes fast enough to capture all the gems that Selene shares on the show. So please relax. I've included lots of the links. Her and I have worked together on putting some great links in there, and I'll feature those on the episode notes, and you'll also be able to find them on my website, What About Vietnam. I really want you to enjoy this program. Nothing more from me. You're going to just have the voice of Selene as she shares her thoughts, her experiences, and her passion for Vietnam. So without further ado, let's say hello to Selene in Saigon.
Vietnam is a sort of very bizarre case in the world. There aren't very many countries in the world that managed to avoid the COVID crisis, but Vietnam did that really successfully. Obviously, there has been a flow-on effect of no tourists, like no international flights, and no tourists being able to come into the country. One of the most noticeable changes of that is that the Ben Thanh market, which was the big central tourist market, has now completely closed, which is quite sad to see because, a lot of people have lost their livelihoods from that. And there was also like a night market right next to that market, which is also closed. So definitely no international flights and no tourists has really affected the heart of Saigon and also the morale of the people because, there are a lot of hotels, restaurants, businesses that relied on tourism, and some other places have been worse affected, obviously, but that's definitely had an effect. However, there has been a rise in kind of the local and also expat international scene. So whilst maybe the tourist nightlife scene has died somewhat, the local expat international and also the local Vietnamese nightlife scene has actually risen. I have to say that right at the moment there isn't much nightlife happening because we had another scare here. So we've gone back to people can go to events, but generally it's limited to 30 people. So there's not a lot of raging nightlife right at the moment, but there was for most of 2020. They love to get out and about. They're very proud of their food. And as you know, they have an extremely strong and vibrant street food culture. So a lot of Vietnamese nightlife actually centers around that. So basically people will go out, they'll eat something on the street, they'll drink something on the street, or they'll go to kind of like a speciality eatery place. It could even be a coffee shop or a bubble tea place, which is pretty popular here. Generally, Vietnamese youth love to be out and about, hanging out at coffee shops, hanging out at bubble tea shops. So, if they're not drinking alcohol, they'll find another kind of venue. But a lot of these places, like a lot of Asia, are open till 10, 11 at night. So there's a vibrant nightlife that's not necessarily, alcohol or bar related. That's the first thing. And then all of a sudden, you get hungry at 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock or 1 a.m. There's usually a place that you can go and eat to on the side of the road. So that's also part of the nightlife I see because people are generally out and about on the streets doing things, chatting, eating, drinking, etc. So the local scene, there are nightclubs as well for Vietnamese people. We can go into that in a minute. But the local scene generally over nightlife in Saigon or Vietnam has always just been, let's hang out on the streets and let's find something to eat and drink. People love to get out and about at nighttime because it's cooler. So that's one of the reasons that any people, in a hot tropical climate, especially when it's humid, love to get out and about at night. And also they're masters of napping, so they can have a nap the next day. So it's all good to be out at night. It's not a big deal like get into bed at, for kids as well, get into bed by this hour. And it's like, oh, well, just go to bed whenever and have a nap later. So, very relaxed. Yeah, and I think that's what makes it fun to be out at night because nobody's stressing out about, we've got to get home to get to bed. It's more like, well, we'll sleep when we need to sleep. It's a different mentality. I find that with a lot of Asian cultures, and there's some obviously Southern European that are like that. It's like, well, if we're tired, we'll sleep. And if that means we have to sleep in the middle of the day, that's fine. Yeah, what's the deal? So back to the expat culture. Well, the expat culture has also really, as I mentioned, I first came to Vietnam and to Saigon in 2005. So there were very specific expat cultures back then. They tended to be, you could say not so desirable older men sometimes, and then also backpackers and travelers, people maybe working as English teachers. There were a variety of reasons why people were here. But now, Saigon 2020 and, a couple of years prior to that and ongoing is a completely different place. For starters, it's an entrepreneur's hub. I think Richard Branson said Saigon was one of the top 5 cities in the world now or something like that as a sort of an entrepreneur's hub. So that has definitely changed the face of Saigon. In addition to that, we had COVID-19. So you had a lot of people who, say in the creative fields, music scenes, even English teachers who rocked into Saigon at the end of 2019 or early 2020, probably expecting only to stay a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and they now call Saigon their home. So we've had a really big shift. Now, the other thing is that when a bunch of foreigners get stuck in a place together, we won't say stuck, but end up living, they start saying, oh, well, I live here now. What can I do here? I can't travel outside of the country. I'm an international DJ. Well, I can't go to, the full moon party in Koh Samui or Ibiza or do any of those things anymore. So I might as well make the most of the scene here. And that's exactly what happened. So, there's the usual, for example, if you're a tourist who comes to Vietnam, there's a number of sort of nightlife experiences you can have, and we can talk about that in a moment. But if you're a local living here, a Vietnamese local or, an expat local, there's only sort of certain things you can do. But what's happened is that a lot of stuff has evolved over the past few years, but particularly I found in 2020. So we have a lot of kind of alternative bars, underground bars, alternative scenes. You have a rise in things like a drag queen scene also happening here from gender funk. They're very kind of proactive in that area. I've been to a few drag shows myself, and they're fantastic. The other thing I might just add in here, I can go into lots of details about all the different scenes here, is what I find interesting about Vietnam and Saigon, and I think this definitely feeds into the nightlife, is that because Vietnam went through, a lot of conflict in its history, a lot of wars, a lot of foreign invaders, colonization, very overpowering other countries trying to always overpower them, from China to French, even Japanese having some time here ruling, war with the US, etc., etc. You would think that they were very averse to foreigners. However, I find Vietnamese people to be extremely open to foreign input, but at the same time extremely proud of their culture and who they are, and also what they've achieved in terms of their independence and becoming a strong nation. So I have very deep respect and love for the Vietnamese people. And I love how because, it takes two to tango. You can't just be a foreigner and rock up here and say, I want to do this, that, and the other. you have to have the Vietnamese people saying, well, we want to do that with you. And generally, everybody has their obstacles. Generally, the Vietnamese have been very open to this experience. And what you've got is this kind of really lovely fusion thing taking place. So when you've got like for example, there's like a lot of cool speakeasy kind of bars or bars in alleyways and stuff. Often there's, a French owner behind it or whatever, but just the mix of flavors. And then people also kind of saying, all right, well, even in the making of the cocktail, there's a fantastic cocktail scene here and like fantastically well-made cocktails now. And okay, let's go into cocktails. So the thing I like about Saigon is that you've got this, labyrinthine kind of streets and alleyways and stuff. So you've got all these fantastic little bars that would have been either in somebody's, like used to be a house or, a shop front or whatever that's been converted to a bar. So you've got a lot of really fantastic alley bars. And even, I'll mention this in the section, you've got like whole areas which are like alley bars or, bars that are in alleyways and stuff. So you've got this really fantastic on-the-street culture where you can go into a cool, cocktail bar. Often there'll be a big, fat, heavy door and you can hear the sound of music thumping on the inside because they really want to block out the sound from motorbikes and whatever else is going on in the street. And suddenly you'll open the door and you'll go in there and you'll go, oh, my God, I've really come into a whole new world that I didn't expect. Or you've gone sort of down an alleyway and then you found an entrance and then you've gone down a corridor and then you've gone up a flight of stairs and around a corner and everything, and suddenly you end up in this bar and you're like, oh, my God, how does this, place exist here? So the thing about coming to Vietnam as an expat or, even as a tourist, to be able to discover these kinds of places, like you hear about a place and you go and discover it. Often you get lost trying to find it. So you're like, is this the right number? And I've got to walk down this dirty alleyway with cats and dogs and rats and things coming out at me. And then I've got to go down in here and up here and around here. And then suddenly you end up in this glamorous cocktail bar with groovy music and stuff. And you're like, oh, woohoo, wow, this was exciting. It is, because it's also a discovery process, of finding it's a sort of, Saigon is a treasure trove of interesting bars and cafes and people and scenes and all sorts of things. So the city lends itself to that. You've got your kind of tourist strip. You've got your rooftop bars, you've got cocktail bars, you've got 5-star hotel bars, which are often rooftop bars as well. We've got, like classic Vietnamese nightclubs, which tend to be a bit fast and furious. And then you've got like this whole scene, which is a mix of local Vietnamese and expats, and obviously not really so many tourists these days, or no tourists these days, but probably in the past some tourists would turn up, but mainly expats would go there. And those kinds of scenes, they're just a bit more, they're not necessarily all alternative, they're just a bit more underground or not so well known. So there's some really interesting, I'll give some examples. So there's a French man here, and I think when we were chatting, I told you I've been on this thing called the Secret Weekend. I've been twice and I absolutely loved it, which we can talk about in a moment. So the people that organise the Secret Weekend, they're called Saigon Dub Station. They also run a place called Indica Saigon. And it is a little bit more alternative, as in, you can turn up in your hippie clothes, you can turn up as a funkster, you can turn up as a I can't even think I can't think what you know what I mean. You can turn up however you want to turn out, and there's anything from, dub to, house to, it just depends on the DJ and the night. But it's like a little house, and then they've got like, it's kind of a little house of curios, in a way, and then they've got like an outdoor area with a lot of the plants are sort of growing into the concrete, the trees are growing into the concrete. So it's just like a cool, and they've got a vegan restaurant attached to that as well. So it's just like a cool alternative place, and it's just got a bit of a hippie alternative vibe to it, I suppose, Then there's a really cool place in District 2, or Daunting, which is where a lot of the foreigners live, called Wham. A lot of these places, interestingly, run by French people. or started by French people. WAM stands for We Are Monkeys, and their decor reflects that. It's a very small place. It's very popular. I've been there a lot of times. They get great DJs, great music. It's very small. Downstairs is just like a little bar, counter bar kind of scenario, and everyone hangs out on the street outside drinking, so you can get like some craft beer on tap. They also have this kind of cool lemonade, like alcoholic lemonade on tap, which I've had a few times. Great cocktails. And then upstairs, it's got this amazing decor, and it's all sort of like wallpaper of, monkeys and jungles and bananas, and they've got written up there, We Are Monkeys, in a kind of like lit up sign. And it's just a cool little funky place, and just small, and they often have nights there. Like there's a group called Saigon Pundits, run by an American guy, and so they do talk nights. Like they did one, This Expat Life. There was one on polyamory. So really interesting topics. So people sort of gather there and talk and drink. So yeah, I just find Saigon's a real melting pot of people. People from different age groups, different nationalities. As I mentioned, a lot of people who maybe only planned to be here for a short time but ended up living here. There's only 2 places I've mentioned. Oh, there's the observatory, which is a really cool late night. It's a bit of an institution that's been going for a while. It's a good place to end up. Vietnam has become a bit of an entrepreneur's hub. It's also, Saigon has, and also there are a lot of teachers here. So generally a lot of the people living and working here tend to be in their 20s and 30s. You get like older professional type people who are working in manufacturing, because obviously Saigon is also a big manufacturing hub, particularly in textiles and garment, shoe manufacture. So you get a lot of like families as well. You get a lot of older people in their 40s, 50s who have careers in those areas. They're not necessarily the ones out clubbing. Not to say that they don't go out. I'm in my 40s. I go out and party. And, yeah, probably the majority of the people I'm partying with are 20s and 30s. But I don't care because I'm out there to have a good time. So, yeah, definitely. But, I mean, that's just like anywhere you go. If you suddenly were in Sydney and you went, I'm going out raving and partying all weekend, you're more likely to find yourself hanging out with a bunch of 20 and 30-year-olds just because, younger people tend to have more energy to party. Also, they think, I think there are no limits. I'm going to keep partying till I'm a 90-year-old granny, at which point I'll become a DJ myself. So the rooftop scene has really expanded as well. So as you mentioned earlier, Kerry, you've been to the Caravel Hotel. So they have a quite well-known rooftop bar called Saigon, and they've had like live acts there. Great cocktails. There's a little outdoor section. You can see the city skyline. Obviously, Saigon has an ever-growing, ever-expanding city skyline because of the nature of, it expanding as a city and construction booms. So you also have the Rex Hotel, which is very close to the Caravel and has a very interesting history, and it's always had a rooftop bar as well. So that's another nice, more relaxed, chilled out place. Often they'll have live acts, some of those 5-star hotels. They'll have a rooftop bar and they'll have like a live band, sometimes, the ubiquitous Filipino band. But then what's happened in the kind of local Vietnamese scene, more than an expat scene. Obviously, if you're an expat or a foreigner, you can go there. We have Chill Sky Bar, which is a bit of an institution. It's probably one of the better rooftop bars in terms of how the bar actually looks and the view from the bar. Chill Sky Bar is in the AB Tower, and it's down towards the sort of traditional tourist area like Bui Vien, Phom Lao. It's down towards that area. It's right near the New World Hotel, actually. So the view from there is fantastic because you can actually see one of the biggest roundabouts in Saigon. So when you're looking over at night, you can see all of the bikes and cars going around. So you can see all the lights, especially going around in a circle. That's a cool view. Plus there's a park there that you can see. so a bit of greenery. And the DJ's box is a sort of circular box, and it's right in the middle of the bar. So you can be, getting your drinks, partying and dancing, and the DJ is sort of there in amongst you. But I think that actually it's slightly elevated. So you can sort of walk up the stairs and see down onto the DJ and then down onto the streetscape. So there's some really great views from, all different angles. So Chill Sky Bar is a great place to go, especially as a tourist, because it's got a bit more of a local vibe. Lots of beautiful Vietnamese girls there as well. A new one that just opened up. Oh, another really sort of great one is Glow Saigon. Okay, that opened, I think, a few years back. I had a birthday there once, actually. That's also sort of more similar to Chill. A new one that opened up is Epic Sky Lounge. Now, I did pop up there briefly last year, and there was some extreme hip-hop night going on with extremely loud music, and we went back down the elevator. There are we were talking about the alternative scene, there are other quieter rooftop bars that are a bit more international DJs. Some of the Vietnamese clubs can be, the music can be quite commercial and loud, we say to the point of distortion. So some of the sort of more, and there are a mix of people that goes to these bars. So there's Broma, not a bar, which is slightly rooftop. I mean, it's like 3 stories high. There's, if you want you asked a very good question about like whining and dining. There's a very upmarket place that's been around for a long time. I haven't been there for ages. It's called Shri. I think it's Shri Restaurant and Lounge or something. It's spelled SHRI. That's in the Centec Tower. So often you have to go into these office blocks as well, like they're at the top of an office block. So Shri is great because it's very beautifully, it's got like little water features and stones that you step over, and it's got very upmarket food. So it's upmarket whining and dining, but you get a beautiful breeze up there, you get a nice view of the city, it's a world away. It's a more quiet, ambient version of a rooftop bar. We also have, if you're a tourist in the downtown tourist area, which is Bui Vien, there's a place called The View Rooftop, which is in Bui Vien Street. It's at one extreme end of that kind of tourist strip. And so for anyone listening out there, Bui Vien is like the Khao San Road of Saigon, which is the big tourist strip in Bangkok. It's the equivalent of that now. So if you want a karaoke night out in Saigon, no problem. Karaoke everywhere, and Vietnamese people love to sing. So, yeah, I went down there once, and I had 2 friends, and they basically went, yeah, come on, sing. And so then my friend got up and started singing an Elvis Presley song or something to this group of about 40 Vietnamese people in that street. It was pretty hilarious. I think I videoed it. So, you can have random, that's nightlife. You can have random experiences like that. You can just join a bunch of people and start, singing with them. But the other area I'm talking about is actually the tourist strip where all the backpacker hotels are. So it's more like your boom boom kind of, clubs, bars, but, with lots of girlies, girly dancers, girls in Vietnamese girls in short skirts serving you Heineken beers or Tiger beers or whatever. So they're kind of more like it didn't used to always be that way because, as I said, I first went there in 2005, but that's also been turned into a pedestrian street. Now, that is quite the circus experience. If you want to go down there, you can sit on the side of the road and eat some local food and drink some beers and watch people walk by, bicycle by, because I think they allow bicycles and stuff, and all sorts of stuff goes on. There's, soap operas taking place. It's the great thing about Vietnamese sort of street life and nightlife is that you can actually just sit on the side of the road and observe. And it's more interesting, and people watch. It's more interesting than watching television. There's a lot going on. You can just say, oh, look, those people over there are having a domestic, and there's a love affair going on over there, or someone's moving their, cupboard on a cyclo, and, oh, look, there's someone with 10 pigs on a bike and 28 water bottles trying to, get down an alleyway. There's all sorts of stuff going on because, obviously people try to load up a lot of stuff. As I said, this is kind of a motorbike free zone, I think, now at night, but people still go down on bicycles. Yes, totally. I mean, if you want to go and, like the experience I just described, if you want to go and have a beer on the side of the road and, some sort of local snack food kind of thing, it's cheap. So the word for a sort of beer on tap place is called beer hoy. So there are a lot of these kind of street places where they have, they'll have an actual shop front. It's not just purely on. So there's street food, just to clarify, there's street food that is purely on the street. They've brought all of the bits and bobs that they need to set that up. And then there are sort of more like sitting on the street, but there's an actual place. Yeah. And they'll have, proper setup and a proper toilet and all that sort of stuff. So those kinds of places, they're normally called a wung, Quan. So it's more like a local place that usually has a certain kind of food. So whether it's beer food, so a beer hoy place will typically have food that goes with beer. So it's sort of barbecued things. It's usually you don't get rice. You can get fried rice, but it's usually non-rice based. It's bits of barbecued things or sort of snacky food to go with your beer because essentially you're there to drink beer. Then you have like a street food place which will just be eating food and might not have beer. So if you go to one of these beer hoy places, you could eat food and drink quite cheaply. If you go to a local bar, again, you can buy inexpensive drinks. But if you suddenly want to go to an upmarket cocktail bar, of which there are now many, certainly the prices go up. But as you just mentioned, the comparison to Australia or Sydney, the things to keep in mind is that if you want to drink, and of course you're not going to drive, your taxi fare is super cheap. If you've got kids and you're going to pay for a babysitter, your babysitter is super cheap. So, and then you're basically, if you wanted to go for a similar culinary or drinking experience as to somewhere like Australia or Sydney, where I'm from, you can have the same or better quality, in my experience, for definitely a fraction of the price. So you could probably pay a quarter or a third and get the same quality. As I said, the cocktail scene here has really gone off. I know somebody who started a bitters company here, and he actually makes the bitters out of a lot of the local products or resources from Vietnam. So I mean things like cinnamon. Saigon is famous for cinnamon. You have lemongrass, ginger, obviously. So there are a number of spices and, obviously it's become a chocolate country. It's a second largest exporter of coffee in the world. So all of these things are going into his bitters. I love his bitters. I think it's called Saigon Bitters Company. And so a lot of the cocktail bars are using these bitters, and it just adds that extra little touch. So, but also, the Vietnamese are really, they embrace so much. So, some of these bars and new ventures are run or have been initiated by foreigners, but Vietnamese are getting up and making fantastic coffee shops, bars, and, they have a strong coffee culture, nothing to do with foreigners. I mean, obviously first introduced by the French, but they are fantastic at running their own coffee shops, bars and everything. And they're fantastic cooks. They've got an amazing cuisine. So they just know how to mix things up, and that applies to drinks and cocktails. So they're just getting really good in the whole cocktail making department. A new thing that started last year called Secret Weekend. They've done 3 secret weekends. It's run by a guy called Morgan. He's French, from Saigon Dub Station. And the last one I went to, Secret Weekend 3, was just outstanding. I had a fantastic time. So basically what it is, I think the next one is going to be in a different location, but the last 2 were at a mud bath hot spring resort about 2 or 3 hours north of Saigon. So it was, I'm not sure if it was a 5-star resort. It was very, beautiful resort. You could stay in a villa or you could stay in a room depending on your income. So basically, to go on their secret weekend, you paid a certain amount. And then they had a party in the forest area of the resort, and they have a giant carved bear which has a tree coming out of its head. They had a lot of fantastic lights, a lot of international DJ acts. There was a bit of a spontaneous drag show performance, and some live music, some guys who were mixing beats and performing, singing at the same time and playing some instruments. The Vibe Mechanics, they're my new favourite thing. I just saw they're playing again soon. So it's just it's what I was saying about the alternative scene. There's just like a lot of people getting really creative, particularly in the music and nightlife scene, and creating these exciting things like Secret Weekend. So it was kind of like a lot of people compared it to Burning Man, which I've not been to, so I can't really say, but it was like a weekend outdoor 48 hours of music. They also have music by the pool. So it's like non-stop DJs back to back, and all international DJs, Vietnamese DJs as well, and just fantastic music and really chilled out people having a good time. They had some teepees set up outside. The lights, I mean, the photos I saw from this weekend were just amazing. And plus then you can go and hang out in the hot pools, and, we were actually staying in a villa and we had a hot pool, like a 40-degree hot pool in our, so, after a hard day of dancing in the forest, you can get into the hot pool. Thank you for asking me, and definitely I'll provide your listeners with cool rooftop bars, cocktail lounges, alternative, craft beer. We can do a whole kind of wrap up with names, and then, when hopefully tourism returns, people can come and check out a lot of these places.
Thank you for listening. Check out the episode notes for more information.
What about Vietnam?
Don't forget to subscribe, rate and review, and stay tuned for more fun adventures in Vietnam.
What about Vietnam?